Huge news week for NASCAR. The best crew chief in the Cup garage just resigned from his position. NASCAR was seen testing a much smaller spoiler on the next gen car, which might get some people excited. And then they're also looking at some other cost-cutting measures that could come into place in 2020. We have a whole lot to talk about. This is a stacked episode. How's it going, y'all? My name is Eric, and welcome to Out of the Groove. It's on my shirt, it's on that sign, it's on this hat back here, and we have a very groovy episode indeed today. A whole lot to talk about. This is a slammed episode. Oh my gosh. Lots of news that I think has very important, long-lasting future implications, so we'll get to all that in just a few moments. You won't want to miss it. But before I get there, let's start with the most shocking bit of news from this week. Monday afternoon, NASCAR crew chief Cole Pearn revealed that he will be stepping away from NASCAR immediately. Cole Pearn has been a crew chief in the NASCAR Cup Series since 2015. He started over there at Furniture Row Racing with Martin Truex Jr. They won plenty of races together, won the 2017 championship together, and then at the end of the 2018 season, both Pearn and Martin Truex Jr. both jumped over from Furniture Row over to Joe Gibbs Racing. 2019 was their first year together at Joe Gibbs Racing, and they immediately established themselves as the dominant car in that stable. Did not win the championship, ultimately came up one spot short, but from start to finish throughout the entire year, they really never missed a beat. But now Cole Pearn is leaving behind a gaping hole in the Joe Gibbs Racing competition lineup. This was the official statement from Cole Pearn as to why he is choosing to resign at this sudden moment. This was an incredibly difficult decision. At the end of the day, I really want to spend time with my family and actually see my kids grow up. Being on the road, you're away from home so much and miss a lot of time with your family. I don't want to miss that time anymore. I want to be there for all the things that my kids are going to experience while they are still young. I love racing, and there isn't a better place to be than Joe Gibbs Racing, but I don't want to look back in 20 years and think about everything I missed with my wife and kids while I was gone. They are what is most important to me. Cole Pearn spells it out pretty clearly, pretty black and white right there as to why he is stepping away from NASCAR, wants to spend more time with his family. He's 37 years old, which seems pretty young. I feel like he's just now coming into his prime as a crew chief, but still, those are his reasons. He also took to Twitter later and reiterated this. He said, "I still love racing, I just can't do the 24/7 lifestyle it takes to be successful in this sport anymore. I love my family and want to win at life, not just on the racetrack." I'm never going to criticize a guy for stepping away, especially if it's, to spend more time with family. Cole Pearn has been, the last 5 years, he's been the most successful crew chief in the NASCAR Cup Series, so he's had his run, he's had his moment of glory and everything. It's up to him what he wants to do with the rest of his life, with the rest of his career, and so on and so forth. So I'm not going to criticize him for that or anything, but this definitely puts JGR in an interesting situation. Cole Pearn has won 24 Cup Series races with Martin Truex Jr. in the 5 years he's been a crew chief. He won a series-high 7 wins just this most recent year in 2019. He was the 2017 Series Championship. Cole Pearn was kind of starting to make his case for possibly a Hall of Fame induction down the line in his life. But this is shocking. Since 2016, that 19 car for Joe Gibbs Racing has seen a ton of personnel turnover. Just if we look at crew chief, since 2016, Darian Grubb has left, Dave Rogers has left, Scott Graves has left, and now Cole Pearn has left. That's just since 2016. That's a lot of change at the crew chief position. I mean, and we're not even talking about driver changes. They've had 3 drivers in that span as well. Joe Gibbs Racing seemed a bit surprised by Cole Pearn's announcement as well. They said that they will reveal a new crew chief for Martin Truex and the 19 team at a later date. So it sounds like this is something that Joe Gibbs Racing really didn't have that much time to plan for as well. It kind of hit everyone almost at the same time and gave everyone just as much of a shock, I guess. Now, Cole Pearn is from Canada. He is Canadian, and Bob Pockrass actually reported that apparently Cole Pearn's plan is to move back to Canada shortly now after his retirement, I guess, from NASCAR, and so that is where Cole Pearn will be for the foreseeable future. Now, I do remember reading back when, at the beginning of the year when Furniture Row Racing closed, and a lot of the people, including Cole Pearn, who were working there in Denver, Colorado, had to relocate suddenly to Charlotte, North Carolina. I remember Cole Pearn talking about how hard that was for his family and how he didn't like the fact that he had to uproot them out of nowhere and move them literally across the country, across like 2 different time zones. I can understand why that would be difficult and why that could potentially be very exhausting to someone, but this is still nonetheless very surprising. I guess what I mean to say is that Cole Pearn has said in recent months and shown in recent years that family is extremely important to him, as I'm sure it is for most people, but Cole Pearn specifically has talked about how important his family is and how the hustle and bustle of a NASCAR career can get in the way of his family. He has talked about that in recent years, so hearing this announcement, when we think about it from that perspective, isn't the most shocking thing, but it definitely is surprising. I mean, because he's at the top of his game. 2019, I just said they were probably the best team start to finish throughout the year, just didn't quite get it done at Homestead. And my goodness, going into their second year with Joe Gibbs Racing, and then with the a new car just around the corner in 2021, I feel like Cole Pearn, man, he's probably in prime position to kind of figure things out, maybe get ahead of the curve once again. But now, what really is interesting is that this leaves Martin Truex Jr. in an interesting scenario, because Martin Truex Jr., he was in decent equipment early in his career. He spent some time in the late 2000s, early 2010s in decent equipment and really wasn't winning very much. He really didn't start winning until he hooked up with Cole Pearn, and then with Toyota, obviously, is really when they started taking off. So we'll see if Martin Truex Jr. can kind of continue to find that same success with a newer, probably less experienced crew chief, but we'll have to see on that one. We'll have to wait and see who Joe Gibbs Racing selects to crew chief the 19 car. Whoever it is, they're going to have some pretty big shoes to fill. But hopefully Cole Pearn enjoys his retirement. But it's going to be interesting. Silly season is not limited to just the drivers, y'all. It's limited apparently now to the crew chiefs. I mean, Cole Pearn's the best crew chief in NASCAR the last few years, and he's gone. So didn't see that coming. Now, really quick, before I get to the big thing that I really want to talk about, the next gen test. Joey Logano and NASCAR participated in a 2-day test at ISM Raceway earlier this week. I want to talk about that. I have a lot to say, but before I do that, I got a couple quick details, a couple small bits of news I want to touch on really quick. I told you guys, this is a loaded episode. Firstly, it was announced yesterday that Ty Majeski will be running the 45 Nice Motorsports truck full-time in 2020, running for a Truck Series championship. He's basically replacing Ross Chastain, who will be racing for Kaulig Racing in the Xfinity Series next year. He'll be running for an Xfinity Series championship. Ty Majeski was a member of the 2016 NASCAR Next class. He has a very strong history in super late models. He participated in the Snowball Derby just earlier this week as well, and dominated that race until he was kind of wrecked on a late race restart. So he has a very strong history at local short tracks around the country. And he did make some Xfinity Series starts for Roush Fenway in 2017 and 2018. He made a lot of just part-time starts here and there in that 60 car, and the results really didn't show much, but at that point I think Roush Fenway was already on its way out. After the 2018 season, they completely shuttered their Xfinity program. I don't think it was all on Ty Majeski, that's for sure. So he never really got a great opportunity at the top level of NASCAR, so I'm excited to see what he can do in a playoff truck. A Nice Motorsports truck, Ross Chastain definitely made that truck look better than it probably was most of this year, but I think he proved that, with a capable driver, that 45 can make the playoffs. So there's definitely some pressure, definitely some expectation on Ty Majeski here, but I'm excited to see what he can do, because he's, like I say, he's been tearing it up on the short tracks. He's been really competitive for many years now on the short tracks. I'd like to see what he can do now, once again in the National Series of NASCAR, maybe with a different team, hopefully with a better situation than he was in over there at Roush racing part-time in that failing Xfinity car. Other bit of news, Adam Stern reports that NASCAR is still considering removing live pit stops from some select Xfinity and or truck races as soon as 2020, as soon as next year. The reasons they do this, clearly the most clear reason is to cut costs. For a small truck series team, paying payroll for several, 5, 6, 7 guys to be your pit crew, paying for travel, paying for all that type of logistical stuff can be a very significant burden on a small truck series team. And so this kind of goes along with reports we heard several months ago where NASCAR was apparently being pressured by the teams to consider this rule change. That still is what it sounds like from Adam Stern's tweet. The teams are still the driving factor. Truck series, potentially some smaller Xfinity Series teams as well, are all pushing and pressuring NASCAR to basically fire their pit crews for them. That's what it sounds like. It's about cutting costs. A lot of teams are having to lay off certain lesser important positions, I guess, shrink their operations down significantly, and it's going to continue to hit, especially the smaller teams first, but if it continues, it'll eventually hit the bigger teams as well. But right now, it's the smaller teams that are desperate for ways to cut costs in the short term, and eliminating live pit stops in just a couple Xfinity and maybe a couple truck races next year could be the next option. I obviously don't want to see guys lose their jobs. I love the pit crew and the pit stop aspect of racing. That's an important competition aspect, so I really don't want to see this happen, but it's potentially just a necessary evil to keep this sport afloat. I love seeing live pit stops in smaller series races, but more importantly, I love seeing smaller series races. So if keeping live pit stops is going to put these teams in jeopardy of going out of business, then yeah, maybe we have to sacrifice a few pit crew guys for the sake of the rest of the series. That's really unfortunate, but that's just kind of what it might come down to. I don't think this is the type of thing where NASCAR is actively wanting to get rid of live pit stops. It just might become necessary because of where they're at financially. So don't go after NASCAR with your whole, they're trying to ruin the sport, they're trying to take away another thing we love. Sometimes they just have to. It might be just 100% necessary. It's either take away pit stops in a few races or take away the whole series, take away whole race teams. And obviously I think the one sacrifice, while not great, is better than the other. So there's the news there. Still not confirmed, but just a report. It's reported that they're considering it, so we'll see what happens. All right, now this is the story now that got me out of bed this morning, made me excited to come in here and turn on the camera and talk about NASCAR. It was this story, this chain of events, this topic. The NASCAR Next Gen car, still scheduled to premiere in 2021. NASCAR performed its second test of this car, or the second test of this prototype at least, earlier this week, Monday and Tuesday. It was a 2-day test at Phoenix, ISM Raceway. Joey Logano now is the second driver to get behind the wheel of this prototype. Austin Dillon tested it at Richmond about 2 months ago. Joey Logano now is the second driver to test this prototype. And here are some of the screenshots. We got a few little clips. NASCAR, it feels like, almost used this session as kind of a media hype session, which I think is a very interesting angle for them to take. But here's some of the photos. The car has a very interesting kind of futuristic wrap on it. I feel like they're really trying to play at the futuristic. Ooh, look at how innovative, how technologically advanced the next gen car is. It looks kind of like Tron out there on the racetrack. It's a cool looking paint scheme, I guess. It's pretty neat. But this car got a lot of people on social media talking. And let's just talk about the few obvious things we see, because we still haven't seen this car racing around other cars. We still haven't gotten to see that type of stuff on track. We've really just kind of can look at what's physically visible on the car and discuss and speculate how we think that would translate to large pack racing. Anyway, first few things I noticed looking at this car, very similar to what we saw in the test at Richmond. A lot of the stuff that we saw there are still on the car here for this test. Most notably the larger wheels, 18 inches, and they still have 5 lug nuts. I know that was a rumor for a while that these cars might go to a single lug nut. This is the second test in a row now where we still see 5 lug nuts. So maybe that shows where they're going in the future. Probably still gonna be 5 lug nuts maybe. Still got the notch splitter on the front of the car. Hood ducts, you still see those hood ducts, similar to what we saw in the All-Star race this year, but you can tell they've been moved off to the side a little bit more, which I think is smart. Doesn't get in the way of sponsorship logos as much, but the hood ducts are still there. It was hard to really get a good shot of this thing, but the rear diffuser is still there. That's still really just weird to see on a NASCAR stock car, but it looks cool and potentially going to have a very important benefit when it comes to eliminating dirty air and allowing the car behind another car to get some air to his nose and turn still. And then the large rear spoiler, this was Monday's test. The large rear spoiler is still there, still comparable, I'd suppose, to the spoiler that they ran in this year's aero package, this year's controversial aero package. So all that stuff, pretty much the same as what we saw at Richmond. However, that was Monday, and I told you guys this is a 2-day test. So when Tuesday rolled around and they brought that next gen car out of the shed, out of the garage, and put it in front of cameras again, there was one very, very, very noticeable change to this car. The giant ass spoiler is gone. It is gone. Look at this thing. Look at it. It's just a nub. It's a nub. It looks like 2018 out there. It's just a little nub. Giant spoiler that drew so much attention, the ire of many fans, drivers, and commentators, as we know, is gone. Look at that tiny little spoiler. Oh my gosh. They haven't given out any measurements for these spoilers, but that thing looks to be maybe a fourth, maybe less of the size of the spoiler that we've had this year, or that was even shown in the Monday test. So very interesting to see NASCAR testing the two extremes here, because I don't want everyone to get ahead of ourselves here. This doesn't mean that NASCAR is going to go with a complete low downforce, no spoiler package for the short tracks next year. That's not what this means. That doesn't guarantee anything. But what this does guarantee is that NASCAR is at least open to the possibility of running a smaller spoiler at the short tracks and using that as a way to eliminate the dirty air effect. It shows that they're at least considering it. And given that here in 2019, we keep hearing the teams and NASCAR say that we want one package for every track because it saves money and everything, this is a nice welcome sight to see that NASCAR is at least not married to the idea that it has to be a big spoiler everywhere we go. The smaller spoiler at the short tracks, I think most fans will agree, is a good decision. That's what we saw this last year with the big spoiler when we went to Richmond, when we went to ISM Raceway, and even Martinsville and the road courses a little bit. The large weight created by the big rear spoiler really made it hard to pass and really made those races worse than they've been in years past. So the idea that seeing a small spoiler on that car, very 2018-esque, and 2018 had some really good short track races, that's exciting for fans to see. But just because we see them testing it does not mean that it's going to be on the car in 2021. We could very well still see the large spoiler when we go to the short tracks in 2 years. I don't want fans to get too excited. I don't want fans to get too overhyped, because I don't want fans to be let down if we roll into Richmond, or we roll into, what's the first short track on the schedule? I mean, I guess we don't know the 2021 schedule, but let's say Martinsville's the first short track on the 2021 schedule. I don't want to see fans all disappointed, all bummed out when the big spoiler rears its head again at Martinsville, because with the diffuser, with the notch splitter, with some of these other aero effects on this new car that they're testing, I think that the dirty air issue is definitely going to be less than it was this last year. Dirty air has kind of been the buzzword the last year or so for NASCAR fans when it comes to criticizing this package. Drivers and everyone alike as well, not just fans. Everyone's talking about dirty air, especially with this most recent aero package. The next gen car, with all those elements, the notch splitter, the diffuser on the back, and potentially the small spoiler, at least at some of the shorter tracks, definitely makes it clear to me that NASCAR's number one priority, or one of their top priorities at least, when it comes to designing this car, is to eliminate or at least mitigate the effect of dirty air and make it easier for drivers to pass and kind of run behind each other. And that's really my big takeaway. We might not see the small spoiler when we get to short tracks in 2021, but with the diffuser, with all these other stuff being implemented, being added to the outside of the race car, it's clear to me that NASCAR is focused on making dirty air less of a factor going forward. And I think that's very important. The small spoiler will be great, but it might honestly not be necessary if all these other attributes work as intended. Anyway, Joey Logano was the driver testing this car today. He had some very interesting things to say. I'll read you a couple of his quotes, a couple of his statements. Like I said earlier, this was kind of like a media session almost for NASCAR for the next-gen car. So Joey Logano, he's obviously not going to tear into the car. He's not going to be entirely honest necessarily with what he has to say, but much like Austin Dillon in October, Joey Logano sounds very positive and very encouraged by what he's seeing. Obviously, NASCAR's right there pointing the camera at him. He's not going to say if it's terrible, but it does sound like Joey Logano genuinely believes this car has potential. But here's some of his quotes. "It's not about what drives the best, what's the easiest to drive. We don't want that. We want something that's challenging, that will show that the best driver and the best team will prevail. So we're trying things on different extremes. A lot of downforce, then little downforce, and then figure out what's going to make the best racing. And then you go from there to make the next step. Bring some more cars. We're still in the preliminary stages, but we definitely have some cool pieces to the car." Joey Logano posted a video on his Instagram, and he talked in that video about how he feels like larger brakes on this next-gen car make braking a lot different, makes the feel inside the car very different than what we've raced in recent years. He also talked about with how the larger wheels feel as well. The steering in this car is also different. He feels like a lot of stuff about how you catch the car when you get loose, when you get sideways, definitely feels different in this car than it has in years past. And he sounds like he's encouraged, though. He sounds like he says it's going to put more of the racing, more of the car in the driver's hands. And I like when a driver says that. When NASCAR says we're going to put the racing back in the driver's hands, that means absolutely nothing. But when a driver, a top driver for a top team is saying that, I think that's more encouraging personally. It's going to be challenging, but I think you'll see more mistakes on the racetrack, which makes, in my opinion, better racing and more passing opportunities. NASCAR's next test for the next-gen car will be at Homestead Miami Speedway in January. They've tested on a 0.75 mile track. They've now tested on a 1 mile track. Homestead will be the first 1.5 mile track, and that's going to be really interesting to see. I have a feeling the large spoiler will probably make a return. In my head, I don't mind the large spoiler at the 1.5 miles because I've seen, think of 2018, a lot of those 1.5 mile races were terrible that year because the small rear spoiler on the 2018 car just made the cars too unstable. Guys were too afraid to pass each other because the cars were too unstable to make moves like that. So I don't mind the larger rear spoiler and maybe a little bit more downforce on the big tracks, but I was definitely encouraged by seeing the smaller spoiler on the short tracks. That was interesting. That was a very surprising but welcome thing to see. So it sounds like we won't have to wait too long to see this car on track again. Just at the turn of the new year, we will get another test on a 1.5 mile. That will be very interesting to see for sure. But let me know what you guys think. I didn't really talk about the look of the car because personally the look of the car is kind of last for me. It looks like a Gen 6 car kind of with a few notable changes. The exhaust pipes on either side of the car seem kind of interesting. I like the way the side skirt looks. It looks more stock. I like the way the back of the car, like the rear quarter panel looks more stock in my opinion. It looks cooler. The diffuser on the back's a little crazy, a little distracting, but it looks neat. It looks cool. The notch splitter on the front gives it kind of a mean look, I'd say. This car, it's still supposed to be just a generic. It's not associated with any OEM specifically. RCR helped build this car mostly, but it's not a Chevy car, so it kind of just looks cool. This looks like a future car. It looks like Jackson Storm in Cars 3, you know? Anyway, I think I've said enough. The car looks cool in my opinion, but that's very subjective. Let me know what you guys think. Do you think the next-gen car looks cool? Are you excited about some of those aspects we talked about? The diffuser, the notch splitter, the hood ducts, the big and small spoiler, all that type of stuff. What are you guys most excited about from what you saw in this next-gen car? Let me know down in the comments. And yeah, that's my show. This is a full episode. I had a lot to say. There's a lot going on this week, y'all. Subscribe if you're new. We do this multiple times a week, every single week, so thank you guys for tuning in. Also follow me on Twitter, follow me on Instagram for more behind the scenes, more of just my thoughts throughout the week if you really care to hear about them. Follow me over there as well. And of course, a big thank you to my amazing Patreon supporters. Mike Waffles, Michael Harrison, at You Is The Stars, Cameron James, John Koblenz, Jason R. Long, Isaac Dennison, Mika Suzuki, iFantasyRace.com, TheRacingInsiders.com, Matthew Koulopoulos, Pepe Lucius, Jeremy Conklin, Emilio Garcia, Joey DiMicino, Sky Racing Forum, Bryce Schumacher, Bryce Starcher, Colton Austin, Scott McNew, and the rest of these incredible incredible Patreon supporters. I couldn't do this show every single week without the support I get from all of you guys, so thank you for your continued support of Out of the Groove. Really means a lot to me. The holidays are around the corner. I've got a few more videos planned over the next few weeks that I'm excited for, and then of course I'm going to be talking about any and all big news that comes out between now and the start of Daytona, the start of Speed Weeks. So going to be plenty of content, going to be plenty of things to talk about. Hopefully can throw in some other kind of one-off videos in that span as well, but we'll have to wait and see on that one. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you for the support, and I will see you all again very, very soon. Have a great rest of your week, everyone.